Welcome to Education 206. We are going to dive into our next critical component, which is critical component number 2 of the effective classroom leadership critical components. This one is thoughtful classroom setup and structure. We'll explore how the physical setup and structure of your classroom directly impact student engagement, behavior, and learning outcomes. This is about much more than decorating. Although decorating is fun and it does have an impact, it needs to be intentional and it needs to support strong student learning. It's about designing a space that supports how your students think, feel, and learn. All right, let's go ahead and review our objectives for this module. Our goals this week include learning how to use the classroom environment strategically. We'll look at real examples from elementary, middle, and high school classrooms. And then you'll put your learning into action by designing a classroom layout and participating in a peer discussion. Our objectives are to understand the importance of a well-organized classroom, identify strategies to support comfort, independence, and learning, analyze setup examples across grade levels, and then, as I mentioned earlier, actually design classrooms we'll talk about at the end of this lecture. Think of your classroom as a silent teacher. A well-designed room communicates expectations, promotes student movement and choice, and sets the tone for learning. Your layout decisions should reflect your instructional goals and support all types of learners. So I want you to think about all the different types of learners that are in our contemporary classrooms. Those who are working at level, they're reading at level, those who might be reading below level, reading advanced, those who may have English as a second language, those who perhaps have some sort of particular physical or learning exceptionalities, which perhaps makes learning a little bit more challenging for them, and need modifications or accommodations. So think about all those types of things that it takes to make sure that they all feel included and welcomed in the learning atmosphere. So whether you teach kindergarten or high school, these elements apply. Seating arrangements can invite collaboration or focus. Learning centers or project areas help students understand space and purpose. Visuals provide predictability, and accessible supplies promote independence. So all of these features need to be considered in a thoughtful classroom setup. So let's take a look at some elementary strategies and examples that need to be considered for a thoughtful classroom setup. Flexible seating is extremely popular. Cushions, stools, and chairs. And when you actually go into your field placement, notice these. You might be in an elementary room, you might be in a middle, you might be in a high school setting. Look at the seating. Are there options? Is it assigned? Are there choices? What's the purpose of the seating? What does it seem to be? Learning centers such as a reading corner, a math station, an art area, and now I'm seeing more and more of those computer stations are being brought back. So I understand that students have the option one-to-one, like all of our classes have laptops, but as we are learning more about how screen time affects students, I'm seeing more of those sort of like tech stations or tech corners where it's not out all the time, it's not accessible all the time. There's a time and a space for it in certain classrooms. So that's kind of an interesting nuance now. But pay attention to the learning centers. Visual schedules reduce anxiety and guide transitions. And you're going to see that they might be fewer in the high school classes, depending on what the subject area is. But If there are no visual cues at all, think about how that potentially can affect the expectations, which we talked about last module. Think about how that can particularly affect trying to reinforce particular guidelines that we want our students to follow. And then personal spaces like cubbies promote organization. And so, looking at, as you go into your field placements, think about how these are supported in the environment. Our next area that we're going to look at is a middle school example. Middle schoolers are developing independence and identity. Design your space to encourage group work, exploration, and ownership. Make materials easy to find. Let them contribute to the learning environment through displays and tech tools. So desks might be actually like in this picture, they might be table groups. They might actually be desks that are put into tables, like a table grouping or a desk grouping for a group activity, and then maybe split apart when students are taking a test or doing independent writing. Resource areas for independent access to supplies. So, like a turn-in station or an area where students have access to a stapler and a hole puncher and, those sorts of things. Look and see how that's all arranged throughout the room. Interactive bulletin boards can be a really great way to include middle schoolers. Look for those not only in the classrooms, but maybe like a little bit outside the classrooms as well. And then, of course, those technology integration stations, places for them to charge their laptops, places for them now that many schools are banning phones from the classroom or limiting them in some way. They might have the phone storage places. So think about those sorts of things. Our next example is the high school example. And of course, this is a traditional classroom. What I've shown you in all three of these examples are traditional classrooms, but you might be placed in a band room or an art room or, a wood shop or something like that for your field placement, or that might be what you're actually pursuing. So it might look a little bit different in those classes, but just keep these particular things in mind. So, high school students thrive when given trust and responsibility. Your room should reflect mutual respect, whether it's a flexible layout, dedicated project zone, or walls showcasing student voices. They love to see their work displayed, especially their really great work. Thoughtful structure communicates that students are capable and valued. It's not just about where things go. It's about how the room runs. How does it function? Combine your physical layout with consistent routines. Students should know what to do, where to go, and how to operate in the space without constant reminders. This leads to more learning time and fewer disruptions. A way that you can tell that, like what we discussed in Module 5, the clear expectations and the thoughtful classroom structure, the one we're talking about with this module, the way that we can tell if they are set up correctly and reinforced correctly and are functional is if a sub is there. If a substitute teacher is there and the class functions like it would function pretty much if the teacher was actually present, then we know that there are thoughtful structures in place supporting the students through their routines and to be able to meet the expectations. Of course, you're always going to have certain students who do not comply with the expectations, but we're talking about, by and large, if the students function just like they would with a substitute teacher present as they do when the teacher's present, there are some underlying structures, physical structures, and those expectational structures that are helping that function be effective. Now it's your turn. Use what you've learned to create a thoughtful classroom layout. Think about furniture, visuals, routines, and materials. Choose a grade level and consider diverse learner needs. Then share your design in our discussion forum to give and receive ideas. See Canvas for the forum and more details about resources and requirements for this project. Take a few minutes to capture your thoughts in your note catcher. Reflect on what stood out and how it connects to your future classroom. These insights will help you in your design activity and deepen your understanding of the connection between space and learning. Have a wonderful week, and we can't wait to see your classroom designs. Have fun.